Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. You're wondering what the hoodie's for? Just kind of it's a little bit chilly in here right now. I got the windows open, just getting some fresh air in, and it's a little chilly. So I figured I'd throw this on for the video, so it was the whole time. Speaking of which, yeah, I've been away the last couple of weekends, so there's been a little bit less in the way of productivity. However, I've got some good news. Because I wasn't streaming this weekend, I took the time to finish the healer verses. I'm now going to wait till 5.15 just to make sure they don't surprise us with any healer-related adjustments. And then we'll be releasing that on Tuesday, assuming nothing has changed. We've already started getting underway for the caster one, which I decided will be the next one since it's the only other versus that's only going to have 3 jobs in it. So then after that, we're going to do tanks, and finally going to end on melee. On top of that, Blue Mage comes out this week, so there will be a guide on where to get all the remaining spells, leveling methods for 50 to 60, which, to be honest, I probably don't need to make a video on, but it's always good to get videos out on these things, as well as the new Mask Carnival challenges and some advice on taking on some of the Blue Mage log-related things, which I'll be trying to get all. I think the screenshot they showed us earlier had 62 entries, so we're going to be trying to get all 62 entries of those done this week. On top of that, we do have some other things that we are planning for the channel, so those are all the 14 related things. We do have some other quick videos on some other topics that we'll be covering in the next couple weeks as well. But since it's the month of December, not only are there updates and things like the live letter coming this Friday, but it's just a good month to just make a few random videos here or there on top of the usual stuff. Now, anyway, on that note, we want to thank our patrons, whose names have been scrolling at the top for a little bit by now, probably. And, of course, thank our patrons of Darkness, Khuja on Jenova, and Kurenai Oni. Thank you, both of you, for your above and beyond support. And for those of you who are supporting on Patreon, in fact, I think I just remembered, I have to remember there's a new name on there, because while I was away for the weekend, we had somebody did pledge, and that was Carrick's Kill of Midgard's Armor. In case I forget to add it while I'm doing the editing, I'm saying it out loud now. So thank you for the elite tier sponsorship there. I'm going to be releasing a video or two on Patreon over the next couple of days. In fact, I'll probably do it after I'm done with this. So anyone who is a patron, be on the lookout for that. But anyway, thank you to all my patrons of darkness. Let's get to the video. Last week was pretty short because we actually didn't have a lot of questions. Let's see if that'll be the same this week or if we'll have a longer video. It's still chilly, even after wearing this for a few minutes. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Haps, how you doing? I'm cold. I'm not doing all right. I'm chilly. Not even cold. I'm just chilly. Hopefully you're doing all right. Question, whatever happened to crafted primal weapons? They didn't have one for Zervin and Heavensward, and I don't think they had any for Stormblood. As a Glamour Hunter, I feel like it's kind of unfortunate that all the shiny weapons are going to be locked behind Relics and Ultimate. Now, of course, what I'm about to say to you has not been officially stated by anybody, so this is my own personal beliefs. It's conjecture, whatever you want to call it. I'm willing to bet the reason they stopped doing them is because there's too many jobs to make glowy weapons for, especially when new jobs come out and they don't have weapons for the old primals. It's a little bit like it's left out because they don't know if they want to really make new designs for the old primals for the new jobs and then have to make these even newer designs. Like they end up having to make basically 2 designs for the new jobs and they have to create the shiny designs for the old ones. I'm assuming it's just there's becoming too many jobs now where it's unrealistic for them to keep up with that many weapons all the time. They've even made mention of needing to change the way that those weapons are obtained, even from the primals that have these totems. So I have a feeling we're just looking at kind of a shift in priorities, and that we'll probably see less and less of these types of weapons, like the crafted primal weapons, going on into the future. The question is, what replaces it? Is it just because of the sheer number of them that we have to get kind of only the traditional weapons and, you know, whatever the first tier primal weapon is, you know, whatever we get from the Savage Mode raids, from the Ultimates, from the Relics? Or is there an alternative somewhere down the line? We don't have answers to either of those questions, but that is what I believe is probably the reason we haven't seen crafted primal weapons in quite some time. Okay, before I answer this question, I would like to acknowledge the comment above it, which did say hashtag Mr. Merry Mondays. Listen, you can do whatever hashtag makes you happy. As long as there's a question after it, that's all that matters to me. I just wants to do it for the month of December. Figured I'd highlight that real quick. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Mrhappy, how you doing? You doing all right? No, so you didn't even ask how you were doing. I was asking how you doing. You asked if I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. My question revolves around the growth of tanks and how it feels like Paladin and Gunbreaker get most of the love. Dark Knight get the Warrior treatment. Warrior didn't get much. Do you feel like they will make some changes to Warrior Dark Knight to make Dark Knight feel less like the other, or Warrior feel more fresh instead of feeling stale? Also, my friend Derek's birthday is soon. He'd love a quick happy birthday shout out if that would be possible. Well, I have no choice now. You called me on it. Happy birthday, Derek. I never knew anyone named Derek growing up. Common name. Didn't know a single person. So happy birthday. That being said, I think this is another change that we likely won't see until 5.0. Having leveled all the tanks, Gunbreaker obviously was brand new. It's the fresh, it's the new hotness. Paladin I've really enjoyed ever since Stormblood's iteration. And this had some additions to it, but didn't really feel like a reinvention of the wheel. It just felt like a continuation of Stormblood Paladin, which worked. Warrior just feels like Warrior, which is, as you're saying, gives it the stale feel. And Dark Knight, while it felt different, and yes, I could see the resemblances to Warrior, I actually had more fun leveling Dark Knight than I did Warrior, oddly enough. So the question becomes, does Warrior get changed to be less of an inner-release machine, or do they make Dark Knight less of a delirium machine? And I have a feeling one of the two will change. I personally almost want Warrior to change more, because I like that you said Dark Knight to feel like Warrior and Warrior to feel less stale. So you're either, that would normally imply that Dark Knight feels stale as well, but I think when it comes to Dark Knight players, they've been through so much change over the years that it doesn't necessarily feel stale on Dark Knight, it just feels too samey. Whereas Warrior feels samey and stale. So I kind of want Warrior to get looked at a little bit. I don't really know what though, because I don't play the jobs, and anything that you kind of wish change-wise is it's not like a universal thing that everyone accepts necessarily, and then there's people who like it the way it is. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think we'll see a major change in either of those, Dark Knight or Warrior, for quite some time. And I think it's because all the tanks are performing relatively close to one another. So, performing relatively close is not the same as enjoying, though. So I do hope that for the sake of the players who main these jobs, that they do make some sort of change before 6.0. I'm just not optimistic, I suppose. Next question, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Happy, hello to you too, by the way. Happy, do you think it's strange that Square Enix hasn't even mentioned the next relic or this expansion's version of Eureka yet? We already knew about Diadem and Eureka before the expansions even came out. I feel like so far this X Pack doesn't have as much content as the last two. It certainly has as much, if not more, because Diadem was a complete disaster after the first week, and Eureka we didn't have till 0.25. The big difference is they're not hedging their bets on going crazy with announcements and hyping up this next exploration content like they did Eureka, because they probably learned the hard way that they hyped up both Diadem and Eureka, and the initial receptions were lukewarm until they got the kinks worked out. So the last time we heard specifically about the relic was during the media tour, in which they went to North America, Europe, and Japan. And the big thing we took away from that is that they didn't exactly know what they wanted to do with the relics going into 5.x, in that they were torn between doing the relics like they did with the exploration content with Eureka, where you gradually grew it over several exploration zones, or doing it the old way, because they said there was a very tight split between the two, and that's probably why they've stayed quiet, is because it probably took them a lot longer to decide on what route they were going to take. Now, we know we're getting a Diadem rework in 5.2, but that is not exploration content. That is specifically redesigning it as a gathering isle for Ishgard restoration-related content. They have, however, mentioned that we should be seeing new exploration content, and this, again, was going back to the media tour, where they say, when we do the next one in 5.x, we'll have learned a lot from Eureka, and, that whole spiel right there. So I think that's just the main reason, is because these are not selling points on the expansion. The relic we generally hear about fairly late. We heard about the other one. We knew it was tied to Eureka, so anytime we got Eureka news, the relic was just automatically news that was tied to that. And the anima weapon we heard about roughly, I'd say, about a month prior. In terms of patch relations, like we're coming up on 5.15 and the anima was 3.15, so probably like a month prior to 3.15, we really knew, at least somewhat of a chunk about it. And the Zodiac weapon, believe it or not, wasn't something they ever talked about much. The relic itself has always just kind of been this, here's a weapon you can grind for style thing. I think they've just stopped advertising that specific aspect. But I expect it in 5.25. That would be my prediction for the start of the next relic and the start of the next exploration content. We'll find out soon. We will be getting the patch 5.2 part 1 live letter. Whether or not they mention it there, I don't know. Next question, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, hashtag 2 questions. Hey, Haps, hope you're doing good and had a good Thanksgiving. I did and hope the same for you. Question number 1, you tweeted about a post to your fundraiser your father started. Do you want to give us a TLDR on that for your Mondays with Mr. Happy viewers? So, just to be clear, it was not a fundraiser event my father started. It was a tradition my father had for the years when he was alive, several years prior to his passing. What he would do is a thing where he would put a cooler out, and social workers, people who, do trash pickups or any sort of, labor workers in the winter, the guys who drive around and salt the streets so that way with the snow and the ice came, they could grab a snack, they could grab water, and then they could, go about their day just as a thank you for their public service, since, generally we just kind of watch the trucks go by and we don't really ever say thank you to those people who are doing that every day. He passed last March, and my mother kept that tradition going strong. She's had a hell of a time since his passing, obviously. But one thing no matter, what life's kind of thrown at her in the last year and a half, she's tried to keep that Charlie's Cooler thing going. My father's name was Charlie, and so they call it Charlie's Cooler. But it costs rising up. It's just not feasible. It wasn't feasible for her to make individual purchases of all that stuff. If she wanted to keep that specific tradition alive, that's what that was created for. I don't think it's gotten much traction. I've shared it once, and my mother told me not to go too crazy with it, just to put it out there. And if people were interested, then so be it. But she has other important things to focus on right now. And I have a feeling, no matter what happens with that the tradition will probably keep going strong. My mother's not one to ever let anything go down so easily like that. Question number 2, what games are you looking forward to in 2020? Oh boy, I was just having this discussion. So the Kingdom Hearts 3 trailer releasing early revealed to us that January 23rd was going to be Remind. Unfortunately, January 23rd is also Crystal Chronicles, which I'm looking forward to both, and I hate that they're the same day. 2 days before that is Temtem, which is like a Pokemon MMO that's coming out. That I'm very much looking forward to because I skipped Sword and Shield, not because of any of the controversy or whatever feedback people had given, but just came at a bad time. I was all Alexander up here, and I just couldn't get the focus. And now I kind of don't want to, I just don't want to dive into it at this point. I'd rather just wait for Temtem, enjoy that. And I think Neopets is even releasing like a mobile app next year for that. And so I like those kind of things. I'm actually, to many people's surprise, I'm actually a big fan of monster catching games. And also what I'd consider, not lifestyle games, but like life chore games, like Stardew Valley. Animal Crossing is coming out, I think a week after. It was a week or two after Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake's an obvious one. Cyberpunk's an easy one. Oh man, there's like a big one I'm forgetting. Oh, there's a big one in January before Temtem. What is it called? Oh no. Oh, what is it called? Oh, DBZ Kakarot. That was the one. That's the one I'm thinking about. And then there's something else in February. Originally, Darksiders Genesis I didn't realize was coming out on Steam, or is out on Steam now, so that was originally February. There's a few other things other than Cyberpunk. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if I thought down the list more, I could remember more, but those are kind of like the ones that are immediately on my mind, and so those are the ones I'm looking forward to immediately. I would say Iceborne for PC, but until I can transfer my PS4 stuff to the PC version, like, even, obviously, they're not crossplay, but just, like, a one-time, like, upload over. Until I can do that, dude, it's so hard for me to get invested in Monster Hunter again. I don't want to play on the PS4, and I don't want to start over on PC, so I'm just sunk on that one. Next question, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Haps. Hello. Hope you're doing well. First time asker. Welcome, and thank you for asking a question. I'm a bit of a glamour fiend and was really upset when they added Hien's outfit without his hair. With Aymeric, Thancred, Minfilia, Snow, Lightning, etc.'s hairstyle in the Mog Station, would you happen to know or be able to guess as to why Hien's hair wasn't there? I was thinking maybe it was a lore reason since he's so important, but Aymeric's hair is there, so I was curious what you think. I have a feeling it's probably a quality assurance issue where they specifically modeled it for his exact character frame, his exact character model, and getting it to wrap around the different heads of the different other races has probably been a little bit more problematic, but I couldn't tell you for certain because I'm not a glamour fiend very much. I don't have any of those outfits off the Mog Station, minus I think a Far Eastern outfit that I was gifted at some point, or any of the things from the various events that we've gotten. But other than that, let me put this into perspective for you. I don't have the Esthetician unlocked on my main. That came out in 2.1. That character's been around since 1.0. And I don't have the Esthetician unlocked. If that doesn't tell you how little I would know about why it would be this way, or how much I'd even be able to wager a guess, I don't know what does. Alright, next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Haps, hope you doing alright. I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Long time viewer, first time asker. Welcome. Couple of related questions. Do you think that the stories of the 24-man raids will keep serving as an advertisement of sorts for other games, or do you think eventually they'll become original to the 14 universe again? Realistically, the only one we have that's original to the 14 universe, if you're including Return to Ivalice, which really didn't act as any sort of advertisement for the other games so much as it did the thing that Final Fantasy XIV kind of does the most and or best, in that it integrates other Final Fantasies and makes their lore tie in and or original to Final Fantasy XIV without tying the games together necessarily. It just takes elements of those universes and puts them into Final Fantasy XIV's world. You know, not so much, oh, this is literally 12 or tactic story, go do that instead. That's like Nier. Nier's like the one of the bunch that's like that so far. But realistically, the only original one we have, one that, while it has characters from the Final Fantasy universe, really has no roots in any other game, is probably the Void series, with the Void Ark, the Weeping City of Mach, and Dunskaith. And I really like that story. I have a feeling they'll always try to play to some sort of fandom with the 24-player raids. I think it worked really well to Crystal Tower. I think it worked phenomenally with Return to Ivalice. And Nier, people have an initial excitement over it, but we've yet to see if it's a satisfying addition to Final Fantasy XIV in the form of the lore and the storytelling and how we integrate it, or if it's literally just Yoko Taro got to do whatever he wanted, place it into Final Fantasy XIV's world, and it'll only ever matter to the people who played Nier and Nier Automata. That's something I'm very much waiting to find out. But no, I even with the Void series, I feel like Diablos was very much a driving factor of fandom, that people wanted to see a stronger version of him. But just not to the same degree as something like the Crystal Tower Return to Ivalice. But I don't know. I don't think we'll ever see original. I think they'll always try to play to a fandom in the 24-player raids in particular. I mean, they do it in the whole game, really. I don't know why I'm singling out the 24-man raids. It's just the direct part of the question. Also, if they were to advertise another game as the focus of another 24-man, what would you want to see? I don't want to see. I don't like this whole Nier thing. I'm not, like, I think it's cool. I think it'll be neat to see how these bosses are done. But the biggest thing is how it's integrated into Final Fantasy XIV. The first 24-player in a series, the first raid, is never very telling. You know, sometimes you get these details, they start to establish more background lore. I think Return to Ivalice did it fairly well. I think the Crystal Tower did it okay. And I think the Void Ark kind of just, it was built up in a very interesting way, you know, with the Ark floating out in the distance, you know, in the months before it was available, and the setup to how it ties into the Void creatures, and the naming conventions being directly related to certain beings of myth in our world, which let us draw a lot of conclusions as to where that story was going. There was a lot of discussion to be had. There's no discussion to be had about Nier, other than, does this tie into the game, and how does this tie into Nier Automata, and how? Nothing interesting's happened in regards to 14's actual universe yet with Nier Automata. It's so far just taking place in our world. I don't like that. That's pretty much how Omega makes me feel. It's just an excuse to bring these iconic bosses without very much in the way of interesting story writing. And so I'm reserved on judgment for Nier Automata until later. And honestly, I don't want this. It's okay if they want to do what they did with Crystal Tower and Return to Ivalice, where they integrate their lores into our world and make it make sense in our story and our universe. Nier, you haven't earned that trust yet, and thus I have no desire for any other game to pop up in a 24-man series. Alright, next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. How you doing? How you doing? See, you didn't say hi, but you asked how I was doing. So it just goes to show me that, you know what, all that matters to you is how I'm doing. So I'm doing alright, and hopefully you're doing alright. Alright. Ever try the game RimWorld? Thought about trying it? No, not really. I sometimes enjoy watching people play games like that, but the thing is, a big thing with my career path and, you know, what my YouTube channel does and what my Twitch channel does is I have to be very particular about the types of games I invest any sort of time into. Sometimes they can be out of direct interest, or it could be just something new and exciting that I want to hop on and see how it does. But often I look at a game and I look at its genre and I go, my audience has never once displayed anything more than a minor interest in that, and it's a very small subset of what my community and what my viewer base generally wants to see. So if I am going to do something like that, it either needs to be in my own time, which, to be frank, there isn't a whole lot of, or it needs to be directly following the things that make sense for my channel, meaning I could do like 3-4 hours of Final Fantasy 14 on a live stream and then do something like that. And even then, after a certain number of days, after seeing how it does over a certain period of time, I then have to make a judgment call on if it's worth doing. And for some games it works, for a lot of games it doesn't. I can make the occasional visit for something like, you know, what's that game called? I can't remember what it's called. It Lurks Below. Like, I could do something like that. But then I can move over to like a full-blown RPG, like a Star Ocean or a Final Fantasy single player, and I'll be okay to do that for long periods of time. So, but then something like RimWorld, it's like, oh, that is just such a drastically different viewer base that it just doesn't work unless I do it like once. And then that's it. So I generally just don't even consider games like that, not because I don't want to, not because I don't like them, but because it doesn't further my channel, I suppose, is the best way to put it. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, how you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Just a small lore question. I'll do my best, because as we've learned with Air Zivia, I'm not always the best person to ask these things. If Eidolon and Zodiark are primals, how come the Ascians in Warrior of Light aren't like, say, Gabu or the Ananta that we saw in Stormblood? Well, it's actually a discussion we've had quite a few times on State of the Realm and the spoiler casts. And the truth is that we really don't understand how much of any of that stuff works. I mean, in patch 5.1, we just came to understand the concept that there isn't just ether of the body and the mind, but also ether of the soul, and how those things even work together, and how we can maybe begin to interpret how tempering works in the first place. Most of the time we see tempering, we don't see this stoic silence. We see this innate need to feed ether to this godlike being to solve problems, this intense aggression. Whereas the people that, you know, are on the source and on the various shards, they all seem to be more like normal people. You know, there are some that have terrible upbringings and grow to be terrible people, and then you have others just trying to barely scrape by. You have all sorts of people from all sorts of different, you know, parts of life. And it's you know, a very basic, you know, humanity. It's humanity existing, no different than the way that we exist. So the question is are we actually tempered? And I think the general consensus is no. But there's no real way to know. People have often wondered if people are tempered to the Warrior of Light, even, or if the weaker Ascians are tempered to Zodiark, or the original three, the unshattered, what was it? The unsplintered, the unbroken, the one of the unsundered. There you go. Whatever it might be. There's so many questions. Then there's no answers. Anything's speculation, and since we don't appear to be catatonic at times when it comes to worshipping or speaking about Eidolon, I'd assume that right now we're not tempered and that we're doing all right. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, hashtag 2 questions. Hello, Happy. Hello. First time asking to have a bonus of a one-shot Ultimate Players. Dude, that's all it's going to take. I just built my first PC. Black Friday deals rule. And as a PS4 player, I'm not sure if I should use a keyboard and mouse or stick to controller. What do you think I should do? Insert SteelSeries advertisement shamelessly. Now, I think I'll answer the question directly. And I see there's a question about ACT here. So I always say, whatever you're most comfortable playing on is the thing you should play on. I've done like top 10 clear in the world progression with controller players, and they're high quality players. I've seen them have to come up with all sorts of solutions for push to talk. Some of them actually velcro the controller down to the desk and almost play it like a fight stick so they can easily reach like a push to talk button. Some buy like a foot pedal, like for like racing games. They use that as their push to talk button. I know some hook it up to their phone, like they just hook Discord up to their phone, and they maybe do, like, instead of push to talk, they do just voice activity, which drives me up a fucking wall, but it's a solution. Which is really the only struggle I ever see PS4 players deal with, is trying to find a proper push to talk button, assuming they don't want to do any of the other methods of communicating on Discord. So I'd say whatever you're comfortable with. Again, the only difference is really going to be push to talk, which I'm assuming is really no different of a struggle than you've had playing on the PS4 when you've had to use Discord for anything. So yeah, whatever you're comfortable with. If you want to learn something new, go ahead. If you want to do what you did before, go ahead. It doesn't make a difference. Where do you get ACT so I can find out how much of DPS they have? I mean, just Google Advanced Combat Tracker and just download all the Final Fantasy 14 stuff for it. I think there's an official guide for it on the Balance Discord, like a full-on setup guide for it, whereas I really just remember somebody pointing me to the website and I just followed the instructions that were on the website. It was like, download the Final Fantasy 14 plugin, and I was done. And then I like went through the settings myself and found a bunch of stuff. But I think the balance has like a full-on ACT setup guide, but you'd have to check because I'm not 100% sure. All right, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Good day, Happy. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'm not as chilly as I was before. I think being in the jacket's finally paying off. I made Dragoon in raids until 5.1 and have now gone over to maining Ninja. While the raids feel great and Ninja also feels great, I wonder what are your thoughts on the job and higher level content? I feel like the hectic opener transitioning into essentially doing nothing for 30 seconds to having to stress out for 30 seconds feels weird in certain fights, especially Hades. Felt like you always had a weird rotation, was either busy all the time or you were struggling to get all your rotations to align again. This might just be me coming from Dragoon, being the job always does something but not a lot. Then going to Ninja, that is burst on and off. I mean, every job has moments where they're on and moments where they're off. The difference is that Ninja doesn't really build to anything necessarily. They just kind of wait for their 60-second timer to come around, and then they squeeze in everything into that 60-second timer. Every 2 minutes, that is a much more hectic time because you have a lot more tools available. But other than that, it's not really that much different than any other job. But just like every other job, this changes on a fight-to-fight basis. Hades is a pain in the ass for a lot of people because there's a constant set of downtimes. There's short burst windows where it's like, oh, well, you know, I don't really need it for this Ascian, but if I don't use it and I just use it on the next one, then I can't use it on the third one. So you try to squeeze in what you can on the first Ascian, but then you come towards the end of it and you're like, I've got a few things here, but I don't want to spend those right now. But now the other things that I had aligned well are now starting to catch up to these because I don't want to use them because it's 2 seconds until the next phase and it's not going to get any uptime. And that just kind of happens over and over again. That's just the nature of a fight like Hades, where it's this constant downtime, you know, in between sections of moderate uptime. Ninja's not the only job that deals with that on Hades. It can be annoying on quite a few different jobs. That being said, I really like Ninja. I would say, like, right now, I main the 3 ranged physical jobs. I can play any of them, though I'm definitely the most comfortable on Dancer, followed by Machinist, followed by Bard. However, if I had to play a melee, it would 100% be Ninja, and I'm sure I'd feel these blights a lot more, but I also know, having done raiding a lot in this game, that it always just comes down to, sometimes you just gotta learn fight. You can't just learn a job, you gotta learn a fight. And part of learning a fight isn't just figuring out where you go for a mechanic, when you're supposed to be in a specific spot, it's how your job works on that fight. And you may have just had an easier time with that in Dragoon because you had a lot more experience on it, and that will come with Ninja, where you'll be able to identify, you know, when it is the right time to do things, you know, when is the right time to hold things, all the essential basics that come with most jobs in the end game. It's just going to take a bit more time. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, hashtag 2 questions. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hello. 1, are there any classes from 11 you'd like to see in 14 or from other Final Fantasy games? Realistically, Puppet Master is the only job at this point that I would like to see in Final Fantasy 14 that was from Final Fantasy 11. They've made mention of it potentially as a limited job. I'm impartial to that because the last time Yoshi P was asked about Puppet Master, I think it was in like 2014. Or something. May have even been before the game had even re-released back in 2013. And somebody said, have you ever considered a job like Puppet Master from Final Fantasy 11 for Final Fantasy 14? And the answer was like, no, we've never had discussions about that. So it's like, man, that's the most Puppet Master action I'm going to get for a few years. So that's the one. Yeah, just Puppet Master. And 2, do you think Square Enix will ever go back to the old raid design where you have a bit of a scenic brisk walk before the boss, which you honestly prefer? I'm kind of indifferent. I don't really care because the trash itself is meaningless. I've always said that unless you have a reason to have trash, I don't really care for it. And in some places, it serves like an okay, like almost like part of the scenery, I suppose. I guess the 24-mans, I'd say, do that in a far superior fashion to any of the old 8-mans where we actually got to walk around. Maybe a small bit of like first or second coil, probably, where the raids and the raid difficulties were there. But man, there were always so many like tedious things about that. There's always so many drawbacks where you just kind of wish the trash was there for a reason. And it never was. And so I'm just kind of indifferent at this point. I don't really mind that we get the raids are just trial after trial after trial after trial, because I'm far more engrossed in the story than I am in walking around and seeing those places anymore. And if they don't have anything interesting to say or interesting to show or interesting to do in those places, then I'm kind of glad they cut it out. But I do hope that if they decide to go to a place that has isn't just like teleport to arena to arena to arena like we've had with the last several sets of 8-man raids, that they do decide to actually give us a brisk walkthrough, but only on normal mode. On Savage, they've even showed this back in Alexander, they just cut straight to the chase. No point in messing around, just get us in there because we are there for the boss, and that is all we are there for. But if we could, I'd love all the 8-man raids in a 4-boss series to all be part of one instance, and for us to have to go between them like we would in a normal dungeon, but as long as it could save our progress properly, that's all that would really matter to me. Alright, after looking through some of the other questions, there's some questions here that are either ones that I've answered a lot recently, or ones I really don't have answers for, or yeah, there's quite a few things here where I just, or there's actually a lot of people who tagged hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy, then said they had a question and then never asked a question. So it's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here. So yeah, I think that was actually going to be my last question. I didn't intend that to be the last question, but just reading through the rest. And then I see one here where somebody just answered the question, kind of, and then there's a lot of like, what do you think of this? There's a lot of questions that are really hard for me to go through and answer, is what I'm seeing with all the remaining things that I haven't gotten through, or things, again, that I've just answered quite a few times in the last couple weeks, so therefore I'm going to have to cut those out. So unfortunately, that is going to be the end of this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. But thank you, everyone who asked the question. If you asked the question last week and it didn't get answered, for once, I'll just say it probably is not a question worth re-asking, because it's probably a question I've answered a lot in recent weeks, or I didn't have a good answer for it, so re-asking it may not yield an answer for another week. So keep that in mind. If you did ask a question this week, that's probably the only reason it wasn't answered, not because of a time constraint or anything like that. And be sure to ask your questions for next week's episode in the comment section of this video. Hopefully you guys are looking forward to patch 5.15 with the Onsal Hakar and the Blue Mage update, and be on the lookout for some videos on that, as well as the healer versus this week, and the caster, tank, and melee versus over the next several weeks. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. I'm going to get working on some other things I've got planned for the week, but thank you for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.